This month's recipe is a pea and Lincolnshire poacher souffle with broad beans and shallot jam.
In this 4-part mini-series, we've partnered with top Lincolnshire chef Darren Rogan to create 4 fantastic dishes that you can create at home. We've teamed up with Neff to showcase some of their amazing appliances. All of the appliances you will see in the videos are on show at our network of 6 showrooms.
So the first element to this would be to make the shallot jam. So all I've got here is some shallots that I've peeled and shredded, added it into a pan on the stove, and then in this one I've got cider vinegar and sugar. So I'm using 10% sugar and vinegar to the mass of the shallots. So 100 grams of shallots, 10 grams of cider vinegar and 10 grams of sugar. And then keep that on probably a medium to high heat, but keep an eye on it. And all you want to do is get them shallots to start breaking down, and just leave it to cook as long as you possibly can. When it starts getting a bit too hot, just turn it down, and that is kind of the shallot jam. So the next thing is to make the souffle. So to start off with, again on a heat, the first thing is to add your butter. So what you're going to do is melt the butter down. So again on a medium heat to start off with. So once the butter is nice and melted, the next stage would be to add the flour and make something which is called a roux. So what you want to do is add the flour, keep mixing it in until it turns into a smooth paste, and then reduce the heat and cook it out for a minute or so, just to cook the flour out. So once the flour is cooked out, add a little bit of salt, so a good pinch of salt into the roux, and then slowly start adding the milk. So you want to add a little bit at a time to start off with, and keep mixing it until it comes into a smooth paste again. And then this time, add a little bit more than what you did last time. So every time you add the milk, you can add a little bit more and a little bit more until it's all gone. So again, keep mixing. And again with the milk. If you add too much at once, it will go all lumpy, so you want to keep adding little bits at a time and keep the mix nice and smooth. So you keep mixing it in, keep it on a medium heat. So once you've used all the milk and you've got a nice smooth paste, add in the cheese. So I'm using Lincolnshire poacher cheese, and I'm also using Coat Hill Lindum. So the best thing to do is use half and half for 2 different cheeses. Use a slightly mild cheese, so like a cheddar or like a Coat Hill Lindum, and then something slightly stronger. So I'm using Poacher, but you can use Parmesan or goat's cheese, any cheese that you particularly like. And again, keep working the cheese in on the medium heat until it's all nice and melted. The mix will look a little bit oily, but that's just the cheese melting through, so don't worry too much. So once the cheese is all nice and melted through the mix, if you take it off the heat and add in, so here I've got some peas that I've just literally crushed down. So they go in and mix that through the mix. and then pull the mix off and leave it to the side to cool down for about 5-10 minutes. So again, just make sure you keep moving the shallot jam, make sure nothing's sticking, and just keep that cooking down. It should eventually go really soft and then start coming together and going stickier. So while we're waiting for the souffle mix to cool down, the next thing is to whip the whites. So make sure your bowl's nice and clean. Give it a good wipe out before you put your egg whites in. If there's any sort of oil or water or anything in there, the egg whites won't whip. When you separate your egg whites to your egg yolks, make sure that you don't leave no yolk in the white either, because again it will not whip. So all we're going to do is just literally whip. So the next stage would be then to add the yolks so into the mix once it's cooled down slightly. And mix that all the way through, making sure it's completely evenly combined. And then the next part is to add the whites. So when adding the whites, you start off with 1/3 of the mix. And you need to be fairly gentle, because if you're too rough, you'll knock all the air out and they won't be as soft and light. So you need to be really careful with the first mix. So just nice and gently. And then the next 1/3, again keeping it nice and gentle, folding, try and keep as much of that air in there as possible. And then finally the rest of the egg whites can go in. And again, nice and gentle, making sure that you don't knock any of that air out the egg whites. So the next stage would be to have a tray of water with some Dario moulds in there. I've already pre-buttered 2 of them. So all I'm going to do is a little bit of butter, go around in the bottom and then come up the sides in an upwards motion, which will help the soufflés rise evenly, like so. So this mix, you can either make 4 small ones or 3 larger ones. So I'm going to make 3 larger ones, and just gently pour the mixture evenly between 3 moulds. So you need to make sure you have got the water in the bottom of the tray, because that will help, the steam will help the soufflés rise. And once you put the mix in, give it a little gentle shake and then just run your finger around the mix to again help it rise evenly. And they're going to go into the oven, so 200-degree oven for 20 minutes. And wherever possible, making sure that you don't go in the oven, because if you open the oven, it can cause the soufflés to drop. So while they're cooking, again, just keep an eye on the shallot jam. And as you can see, it's starting to cook down now. The shallots are starting to soften and it's starting to become stickier. So once the soufflés have had 20 minutes, simply open the oven and take them out and leave them on the side to cool down. They will drop down slightly as they cool, but that's okay because you're going to take them out of the tray, put them onto a second tray and bake them the second time, hence why they're called twice-baked soufflés. So once the soufflés have had 5 minutes to cool down on the side, just gently run a knife around the edge just to release them, pulling towards yourself slightly just to make sure that the bottom of the mix is also released. And they should just gently fall out, and put them onto a tray ready to bake. Like so. And then they're going to go back into the oven for approximately 10 minutes on 200 degrees. So while they're warming up, the last thing for that dish is to make the sauce. So again, put a pan on a medium heat, and this one, it's going to literally put some cream into a pan, small pinch of salt, tiny bit of rapeseed oil, and then bring that to the boil. So once the sauce has come to the boil, all we're going to do is add some broad beans that have been depodded, so make sure you take them out of the pods that they come in. And then I've got some grated Lincolnshire poacher cheese just to finish the sauce off. And again, bring that to the boil to warm through the beans and to melt the cheese. And then once the sauce is come up to the boil, take it straight off the heat and make sure you serve it pretty much straight away if possible, because otherwise the cheese will start solidifying, and if you try and rewarm it, it could burn. So once these soufflés have been baked for a second time, for about 10 minutes, you'll see that they have started to puff out again. And then we're ready to plate. So we've got the shallot jam. So just a nice spoonful of that. And then the cheese and the broad bean sauce. And then the twice baked souffle. And then I've got some spice mix here. So this is called za'atar. So it's like a Middle Eastern spice. So it's full of sumac, lemon, like a lemony sort of flavour, dried marjoram, dried oregano and sesame seeds. So a bit of that to finish. And that's complete.
If you'd like to find out more information about our products or services, please get in touch or visit one of our showrooms for more information.